Hello and welcome back, and today we're going to talk about the original Prusa MMU3. The MMU3 stands for Multi-Material Unit. The Multi-Material Unit version 1 was introduced in 2016 by Prusa, and it was working on the MK2 and MK2S printers. The MMU2 came out in 2018, and I purchased that, and I waited for my brand new MK3 printer, and I never got it. And now Prusa sent me the upgraded MMU2S in early 2019, and so I've had that forever. And that's what I'm upgrading today. I'm upgrading from the MMU2S to the MMU3 on my MK3S Plus printer. So not on my MK3S, on this one, on that very printer. And I'm not going to test it with the MK4 yet because I have another unit, MMU3, in order as a full kit, not as an upgrade kit. The PETG Prusament that I'm going to use today is high quality Prusament by Prusa, and I would recommend you use the same filament for all your operations in different colors, of course, but from the same quality, same vendor. That way you have the proper settings, the settings apply throughout the entire print. My spools are set up, they're hanging from the ceiling. I have 2 rows of 5 spools. The spools feed PTFE tubes. The PTFE tubes came with the MMU3 unit. Those PTFE tubes feed the cassette buffer assembly, which hangs from the ceiling in my case in order to save room on my table. The filament is actually going from the buffer assembly to the MMU unit using those 5 PTFE tubes. And they go to the MMU3. So the MMU3 receives 5 filaments. But from the MMU to the extruder, there's only one unique PTFE tube. So the MMU unit's role is to actually push filament, the filament that you want to use at one particular time, to the MMU, to the extruder. So the extruder has only access to one filament at a time, and the MMU has access to all 5. So the MMU is actually pushing filament into the extruder when you want to insert a new color, and it's actually pulling on that filament when you no longer want that color in the extruder. The introduction of those 5 cassettes by Prusa is the big difference between the MMU2 and the MMU3. Many of the parts are similar, but the PTFE tube, the PTFE tube interface and the cassettes is a big improvement on the MMU2S. I had mixed results with the MMU2S, but I think as we will see at the end of this video, the MMU3 is actually printing perfectly. So for the first print, I used the simple MMU print test, which I created for this MMU units. It's available on printables. It's been there for a couple years. And we can actually see the very first filament change right now. So that was my first filament change on the MMU3 in video. So it's actually inserting crimson red filament from Prusa. So, and it's printing relatively well. I had no problem on that first print. Every color change went according to plan. However, the white tower quality was poor. I had a lot of residual filament, and you can see it is grainy, and the printhead was not assembled properly, might not have been tuned properly, and I'm going to go through the steps that I took to actually tune the printhead properly and remove those artifacts that you just saw on the screen. But again, the filament is coming out properly, as you can see. And as it's coming out from the MMU, it's making a nice loop inside of the buffer, which Prusa calls the cassette buffer assembly nowadays. And it grabs the next color, which in my case is the pistachio green, and it keeps on doing that very small print, which is basically just 5 discs on top of each other, which forces 5 filament changes, going from 1 to 2, 2 to 3, 3 to 4, 4, 5, and back to 1. So I would actually call this first print a partial success. It's obviously not perfect because, again, my wipe tower, as you can see here with the white, is not good. As you can see here on the screen, the quality of the wipe tower is not good. But again, you throw away the wipe tower, so it's not properly tuned. It's not assembled properly. But you know, for a first print, it was okay. So what I did is I went back and I retightened every single screw on the print head. And I actually removed the PTFE tube that's inside of the extruder, and I reset it and I tightened it again. It was not working properly. So coming here, I decided to do a second print. So the second print is a little big head snail, and that's a remix that I did. It was a single color object, and I actually used the Prusa slicer to paint it in 5 different colors. And some of the layers are actually using 4 different colors. So they use the pistachio green, white, black, and red. And as you can see here, I had actually 6 failures. Every single one of those failures I was able to recover just by pressing a button. So the MMU3 is much more forgiving than the MMU2S. I would never have recovered from all those errors on the MMU2S, and I would probably have ended up with a failed print. However, the quality of the print was not good. And last but not least, I had an horrible mistake that I did, as I used an old filament, the crimson red, which has been open for 2 years, and it probably has like 20-25% humidity content by now. I had to actually take apart the MMU unit because in fact it broke inside of the MMU unit as the MMU pulled on that red color. So it's happening right there, and as you're going to see me intervene on the printer. That's really bad. I was sure it was not going to recover, but it actually did recover, and it finished the print. And the print quality is not very good, and we will see we have a lot of lines on those models. So the first sign of problems, which is absolutely obvious, is that the filament, the crimson red filament broke, as you can see, inside of the MMU unit, and the other filament have actually tips that are not perfect. So in order to fix this, I did four different things. The first one is I tuned the M3 by 40 idler tension screw, which is on the side of the extruder, right there. This screw must be flush with the wall, exactly like this, with the wall of the extruder when filament is actually inserted inside of the extruder. So as it's coming out right now, the screw pops up, and then when it goes back in like now, it's actually going, the screw is going back flush with the wall of the printer. And you can go back and look at that screw, it's coming in and out. But when the filament is inside of the extruder, as you're looking right there, the screw becomes flush with the extruder. And that's very, very important. If that screw is not set correctly, you will not be able to feed the filament consistently, or not 200 times like you need. 196 times to be precise to print my Snail army. The second thing that you have to fix is those two screws. On the idler tension has to be perfect, because that's allowing the MMU to actually grab the filament and push it into the extruder or push it out of the extruder. And so these two screws need to be flush with the body of the MMU unit. And another thing that you have to do is you have to perfectly set up the FINDA or super FINDA sensor. The steel ball needs to be about one thread above the ball when filament is inserted. And last but not least, the PTFE tube needs to be inserted as deep as possible into the print head, and nothing should be moving. So the radiator and the print head and the aluminum body need to be really tightened. Those screws need to be tight. So with this fixed, I did a third print, and as you're going to see, the 196 filament changes went just perfectly. There was absolutely no problem on the second print. It printed in 10 hours, and I ended up having the second half of my Snail army. And the only thing I've changed is I've actually changed the color of the shell of the snails from jungle green to terracotta. And the terracotta is actually filament by Prusa as well. So all the colors that I've used, all 7 colors that I've used today, are all Prusa colors. All of them are Prusament PETG. There was no mix of like third-party filament or third-party PETG filament. So here we go. Perfect success. I have 4 new members of the Snail army. It's absolutely obvious when you compare the first, the second and the third print that the fixes that I have done have actually improved the print. There are way less print artifacts, in particular the lines on the dark green snails is horrendous. It's not good. But if you fine-tune those 4 screws as I just did, you're going to end up with snails that are much better. And you can see on the wipe tower the difference in quality of the wipe tower. The wipe tower layers on the left, which is from the third print after tuning, is way better than on the second print with the jungle green. So should you buy the upgrade? So if you have a MMU2S, it's a no-brainer, because the upgrade is only $89, I believe, on Prusa's website. So I think it's a great success. The MMU2S never gave me as good of a result, and the MMU3 actually seems to be more reliable. I never had to press a button during the print of the terracotta snails with 196 different filament changes. So for $89, I would say it's a great investment. We'll talk about the MMU3 on the MK4. Should we spend the $340? I don't know. We'll see. Thank you very much for watching this video, and I'll see you later. Bye.